All right, let's talk wide receiver, D. Obviously, it's a room that you're replacing a ton of production, arguably outside of quarterback, which that goes without being said. The most important, I would say, in terms of Miami's long-term success this season, I don't want to call it long-term success, but what their ceiling can be, I think, offensively, because you have a lot of new faces there, and you're counting on a lot of guys to either come back from injury or show you something that we've seen in flashes, but has not needed to be something that's relied upon.
Yeah, this is going to be a group to watch. I can tell you this. Watched the receivers in spring, and I thought this was an impressive group at the time, not knowing what we were going to add. The young guys, particularly the true freshmen, Malachi Tony, Josh Moore, Dalen Upshaw. We'll get to that. But just my overall impression of spring was, hey, we kind of hit on these guys as freshmen. They're going to be ready to play. You didn't get the fullest picture because your quarterback situation in spring was not ideal. Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, freshman Luke Nickel. That's not Carson Beck. Certainly not Cam Ward. So you didn't get to see the full picture of what these guys can do. So I think with the full offseason in the summer and then seeing these guys in camp, in August camp with Carson Beck, we'll know a lot more. But the buzz I'm hearing overall, we reported this on the bank on previous episodes of this show. I keep hearing, hey, these are good players, man. We got better guys at these spots at wide receiver that people think. We're more confident on this than maybe the public, but remains to be seen. Critical position for the offense, probably the critical position for the offense. If Carson Beck, which we've heard and seen health from him, so assuming he stays healthy, receiver is the big question here.
Yeah, and you're going to be really relying on a couple young guys, I think, to be your big play receivers. I think CJ Daniels, we are pretty confident on the health. I don't know if you saw the video that I was playing the other day when we had 50 on from category 6, but he had posted another video, one of these off-season workout videos, looking really good. I think with the leadership that he's shown and going back to the health, getting back to 100% from that heel injury, I'm kind of penciling him in as wide receiver at number 1, but that also doesn't mean that a Jojo Trader or Malachi Tony can't be Miami's most explosive playmaker.
Yeah,
and really the one that puts the scare in a defense.
Yeah, people, pull up that CJ Daniels highlight, because I want to start there, right? So let's start with CJ Daniels because he is the veteran of this group. Carson Beck called him a glue guy at Media Day. I interviewed him for Storm Sessions, my official show at the University of Miami. I always check that one out. The thing you see with talking to him, being around him, first of all, this guy's got good size, man. He's long, he's wiry, every bit of like 6'2.5", strong, wiry frame, big hands, built the way you want a possession receiver to be, and he's old. Talking to him, I mean, you can just tell he's just different than talking to like a Jojo Trader, Malachi Tony. This guy's 23 almost years old. So the age factor. The question with CJ Daniels was going to be his injury. He was a standout at Liberty. He could have gone pro out of Liberty with Cade Salter as his quarterback, averaged 20 yards a catch, was one of the top receivers in the portal. Goes to LSU, which shows you just how coveted he was in the portal. Starts right away, was a starter for LSU, and was a reliable possession guy for him, but had a lingering foot injury, which limited his explosiveness. So his yards per catch dropped precipitously. Was really just like a possession receiver for LSU, although he did play a lot. I heard he was great in the LSU locker room. Had the late Kyron Lacey there, and Daniels was someone that really kind of kept him on point while he was there. But the foot injury hurt his suddenness. Got surgery in the offseason. As you watch these highlights, man, put him back again. You see he's got some pop in his feet now. I mean, he is moving very, very well. Came back in spring, at the end of spring. He was sitting out the beginning of spring because of the recovery from that offseason foot surgery. Made some spectacular catches. One catch in particular, Pete. His dad sent it to me. I sent it to you. I don't know if you saw it. Just he made like a one-handed catch that was like an Odell Beckham type, legitimately. I don't say that lightly, like a legit Odell Beckham type catch in the IPF in coverage. That was unreal. So he has the ability to make some extremely spectacular catches. I think the only question with CJ Daniels is the separation and the twitch coming off that foot injury. But seeing these highlights makes me think, hey, this guy could easily be a number one receiver in the ACC. If that what we're seeing here translates to the football field.
Yeah, and I think the downfield threat too. For as we've talked about it, it's kind of interesting. But for as great as Miami's offense was, and for as great as Cam Ward was, you didn't have a deep threat. For whatever reason, they could not connect on deep ball last year. So Daniels, with his history going back to Liberty, 19 point something yards per catch that year, with Caden Salter a couple seasons back, which really I think put him on the map and kind of put him in the position where he could go to the SEC and try to prove himself before the injury. So are we kind of downgrading his downfield ability a bit because he's not your typical burner?
Yeah, and look, I'm pulling up his numbers from Liberty, right? Freshman year, 20 yards a catch. Sophomore year, this is actually, I guess, he had the repeated freshman year because of COVID. He had 17 yards a catch. Then sophomore year dropped a little bit. He only played 4 games. He got hurt. So let's just put that, only had 3 catches. Let's put that year aside. Then the junior year comes back from injury, 19.4 yards per catch, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. This is what put him on the map as a high major transfer. LSU last year, again, starts 42 catches. So he was out there playing for LSU with Garrett Nussmeier, but only 11.4 yards a catch, 480 yards total, 0 touchdowns. So that's the story. Was the drop in yards per catch based on lack of competition at Liberty, or was it the injury? I think it's probably more the injury, but we'll have to see. That's the big question mark. I just love this guy, his mentality. Talking to him, this is a guy that not only is very smart, very experienced, but he cares about the team. He cares about his own. He's an incredibly hard worker, but he also cares about bringing people along. Again, I mentioned the late Kyron Lacey, who there were great reports at LSU about what CJ Daniels did for him, just getting him ready to play through that season. And then this year, you hear all about how he works with the young guys. Carson Beck, like I mentioned earlier, called him a glue guy. So you see that with the young receivers. I don't think we had that last year. I think the receivers last year were more focused on their own performance, and I'm not saying it's a negative. It's just they're not like, there's a lot of great players that lead by example, and they're more focused on, hey, look at what I'm doing, as opposed to going out and dealing with these people. It's different personalities. I think Daniel's the one that takes the extra step to just grab these young players and say, this is how we're doing it. So very good addition to the room. If he's healthy, could be a huge addition. I know internally the expectation is that he will be significantly better than, or at least better than what Isaiah Horton was for us last year.
Yep. I think that's a good bar. And I think it's possible that he surpasses that, because look, Horton was not wide receiver number 1 last year, in terms of the fact that you had Restrepo here, you had Arroyo, who I think kind of scared defenses a certain way. But Horton still had very solid production. So Daniels going to be probably getting more targets than him. I still think it comes down to these young guys, though.
So let's start. TJ Preble laid it out. Can't wait to watch Jojo Trader this season. A good season from him will show local kids it can be done at the U. So, I mean, that's the name. And when you talk to people about Jojo Trader around the program, basically what the word is this guy is the most important player in this class, or in this receiver group, because if he becomes one of the best receivers in the ACC, you're really looking at a much more dynamic receiving core. Saw him in spring. I mean, I've seen it since he got here, but just looking at his spring performance in particular, coming off that bowl game where he was outstanding, he was the best receiver by far on the team. I mean, CJ Daniels still working his way back from injury. We didn't have Keelin Marion and Tony Johnson, so we didn't have our full assortment of receivers that we're going to be talking about here. But in spring, Jojo was hands down the best receiver. He was completely uncoverable. His ability to change speeds, his ability to track the ball, his ability to adjust to the ball. He just makes it look so easy. He is a freak athlete, and not in the way that, like, usually when you think freak athlete, you think of like a Metcalf, right? A guy that's just super jacked, runs like a 4.3. Trader's not like that. I mean, he's definitely fast. He catches bombs all day, but it's not like a track speed kind of guy. He's just so athletic in terms of everything is smooth and easy. The ability to adjust naturally to the ball, the in and out of his routes, the ability to just casually one hand the ball. He just has that natural gliding smoothness that is unusual, Pete.
Yeah, he body control. I think we use that phrase with him a lot. He kind of just floats in the air sometimes. It's sort of like a ball handler in basketball when they may not be the quickest, but they can speed you up and slow you down, which then makes the defender look sort of out of balance, and then they're able to attack at the right time. So I think he he's a bit of a technician as well at the position, and I think he just needs some confidence and some touches. Really, D. I think it's probably not the easiest thing in the world for him to see his high school teammate Jeremiah Smith do what he's doing, and he's probably thinking, "Look, I feel like I can do similar things. I just need the opportunity," and the opportunity was not there for him last year. He was not necessarily ready physically. He had a couple chances, didn't necessarily do anything crazy with it. And I think he's going to really grasp what's in front of him now. And Miami has put trust in him too. They did try to go get another receiver, but I don't think that would have changed what his role in this offense would have been.
He was clear number one receiver in camp, in spring, I should say. And we'll see in camp now with the other guys there. I think if you asked anyone around the program, you said someone's going to score a touchdown against Notre Dame, you can guarantee someone scores a touchdown, who would you pick? Jojo, because you just want him to get started with that momentum. He looked great against Iowa State. That was his first real opportunity to play extended snaps with Cam Ward at quarterback. I think Cam Ward just being so much of that win now mentality, that number one passing offense in the country. So you're not exactly trying to bring along a freshman when you're number one and you have to score every time because your defense can't stop anybody. So I remember Cal, I think he played a couple snaps and he fell on a route or something and it cost us a drive. Yeah. Nothing's, again, normal freshman stuff. I mean, I remember seeing Santana Moss and Andre Johnson as freshmen. Andre Johnson didn't even play, but seeing him in practice, like, that's normal freshman stuff. But because of the fact that you had the number one passing offense in the country, number one overall pick, you had to score every time because your defense, I think that led him to getting blocked a little bit where you just couldn't get veterans in front of him. It was hard to just bring him along. So I think that's really the reason why I didn't play. You look at Carson Beck's comments on Jojo Trader. This is from Media Day. Shout out to David Lake. This is from one of his notebooks on 247. This is Carson Beck speaking yesterday at Media Day, or 2 days ago at Media Day. He goes, on Jojo Trader, he is crazy athletic. I remember we were out there before our player-led workouts. This was before we had warmed up and we hadn't even stretched, and someone threw him a ball and it was a little bit high, and he jumps up and catches it with one hand and does a backflip while he's snagging it. I looked at him and my jaw dropped and just said, man. Then this is Trader talking. He said, man, I've been flipping since I was a kid. So he can do some crazy stuff with his physical gifts. He is a guy that I am definitely excited about. So that was Carson Beck on Jojo Trader and relaying his conversation with Jojo Trader. And having seen Jojo Trader, that's how he is, man. He's back flipping everywhere. Like, I'm talking about just during the games. He's front flipping. He's catching things with one hand. He just is doing that stuff all the time during practice. Like, padded practices, scrimmages. I mean, that's just what he does. So to me, very simple. If Jojo Trader is healthy and if his body is ready, and he's not like this is not like a guy who's like 160 pounds, but he can gain, he can get stronger. There's no question. And he's been nicked up. He was nicked up in spring, didn't play in the spring game. So if he has enough wiry strength. You saw him in the Iowa State game, stiff arm that defender and make that touchdown. That was a pretty physical play. It wasn't like he just ran by him. And he's made nice blocks too. I've seen him crack back a few guys in his limited playing time. So if he can just get his body to a point where he can be durable and healthy throughout the year, I think you're talking about a guy who will get drafted higher than any of our receivers last year. Of course, they were all undrafted. but certainly has more NFL potential than those guys, and could be maybe a day one if everything goes right, but certainly like day two kind of guy because of his athleticism.
Question here from Al Lewis asking if Jojo played enough to take away his redshirt. He recorded stats in 4 games, and then I just saw he did not record stats in the Cal game that we know he played in as well. That's probably going to be a tight one. I'll say this on red shirts in today's era. They aren't really worried about it, man. These guys are either going to be there for 3-4 years and go to the pros, or they're going to transfer out if it's not working. So I wouldn't look too much into these guys who have a red shirt or don't. I know Canes Cats Heat 305. You asked that question a lot too. But whether he's a redshirt freshman or a sophomore, he's either going to do his thing this year and have another great year next year and maybe head to the pros, or things don't go how we all hope they go, and he's going to transfer out. That is the reality of how it goes. These coaches aren't worried so much about red shirts. If they aren't ready to play physically, they're not going to play, but that's not because they're trying to retain a red shirt on these guys.
Yep, totally agree. If things are going right with Jojo Trader, he's dipping out as a sophomore, right?
Or as a junior,
third year player,
or a redshirt junior, a redshirt sophomore, as a true junior,
a draft eligible player. So it doesn't matter if you're redshirts or not. And I don't think he can redshirt, so he'd be a junior. I think he's a sophomore this year. Before we get to the next, Pete, I'll let you figure out which direction you want to go in slot receiver next. But Brandon asking, how was the Rockies game? Awesome, man. Incredible. They had like 20-something thousand there on a Wednesday at 1, and their team's in last place in the whole major league. So they got a great thing going from an attendance standpoint. Great stadium, mile high, obviously, so you can see the mountains. Just feels good, good weather, great setup. As a Marlins fan, I'm jealous of how they get down from that standpoint.
So let's go to Tony Johnson, D, because I think he's a bit of not only a forgotten man, but someone that I'm getting a sentiment in a lot of the comments, like, why did they take this guy? You already have a lot at receiver. And man, I look at his numbers starting his career at FAU, was at Cincinnati the last couple of years. Was the last couple of years or just last year?
Good question. I don't know.
Last year at Cincinnati had 48 receptions, 449, 6 touchdowns. His numbers have gone up in every category every year. Not in yards per reception last year.
One year Cincinnati last year.
1 year Cincinnati, which was his best year statistically, 48 receptions.
6 touchdowns.
I think Malachi Tony ends up being Miami's best slot receiver, right? Before we really get into depth on Malachi. And then we understand that Ray Joseph is also in the room still. But are you going to rely on a true freshman? When I say rely, like I'm talking about down in, down out on a true freshman who it looks like he's already taking the steps to be the guy at that spot. But then you have another guy in Ray that, again, we still are holding out the best for it and hoping for the best for him. But it's been 2 years, and if it doesn't happen this year, then there might, we got to see what happens there. It's not a guy that you're relying on necessarily. It's still someone who Mario has plans for in the program, as we've seen the way that he's taking guys out recruiting wise and things of that nature. But this is a solid piece, man. This is a very, very solid piece in terms of the production you're bringing in. I don't know that it's the most dynamic skill set, but it's a reliable veteran player. And D, I think the part of this that people forget a lot of times too is how long these seasons could potentially be if Miami goes the distances that you want them to go. This could be a 16, 17 game season. That's a lot, man. We've been pretty lucky with injuries for the most part. I'll say it, last year they were. But that's a long season. It's a long season. So that's all I'll say there.
No, 100% agree. So Tony Johnson from Ocala, Florida, same hometown as Tommy Kinsler. I think he went to the same high school in Vanguard as Nkosi Perry, just for some old context there. But I mentioned that the comment from Carson Beck on CJ Daniels was glue guy, which is interesting because before they did that media day, talking about Tony Johnson was someone on the staff, and they called him a glue guy, right? They talked about Tony Johnson being a glue guy. So this is you got two guys who are veterans with high character. Just talking about Tony Johnson's character, and I very much believe that character at wide receiver is important. Now, you get maniacs who are all-time greats. They get traded a lot when they get to the pros because teams can't handle them for too long. But you do have maniacs, but even those maniacs like your Tyreek Hills, your Antonio Browns, Terrell Owens, guys like that, they're maniac workers. So their intangibles are very high in a lot of ways, maybe lacking in some ways. But in general, this is a position you got to be wired a certain way. And if you're not, those are the guys that bust. With Tony Johnson, basketball player in high school, also a pretty good football player, but not a highly recruited guy. He goes to FAU as an academic scholarship. So he was an academic scholar. This was the Kelly Struhl Emerging Scholar Program for FAU. Goes there. So he's smart. Works his way from walk-on into a player that is relied upon from the team. Goes to the Power 4 level in Cincinnati and leads that team in touchdowns. This is a guy who's worked his way up, has really grinded to become what he is, which you like to see. You like to see guys that have that mentality of just growing and improving to add to your room, as opposed to having to light a fire under him, right? You don't want to bring a guy in the portal and have to motivate him. So I think with Johnson, he has those intangibles that you love, and he's produced. So your floor at slot receiver is elevated with a guy like Tony Johnson. And before we even get to these other guys, the standard at slot receiver for Coach Shannon Dawson and now Kevin Beard, who's getting some love in the comments from 850. Shannon Dawson at Houston had Tank Dell. Tank Dell led the entire nation in receiving. He was the number one receiver in the country statistically. Then goes on to the pros. Xavier Restrepo last year was first team All-America as a slot receiver. First team All-America. So not only is this an important position in Dawson's offense, his last two guys, and I don't use this word lightly, were elite college players. Elite. I mean, how can you be, if you're first team All-America or you lead the league in the nation in receiving, you are an elite college player. So that's the standard. Now, is Tony Johnson going to become that elite player in the system? We'll see. I don't know. But he certainly elevates your floor. And if someone like a Malachi Tony says, hey, I'm going to be elite, you got to be able to perform at a standard higher than Tony Johnson, which is going to be someone who can help you.
Depth, man. It's a wonderful thing to have. And I'm not saying you have it everywhere, but I think this is a nice depth pickup, and it could be more than that.
100%. 100%. Led a Power 4 team in touchdowns last year. This guy's played football. He can go. But I think when you talk to people around the program, it's certainly what I didn't see Tony Johnson in spring because he wasn't here yet. But what I did see in spring and in the spring game, for those of you who were there, but this was also during the practices, somebody who was consistently making plays every single practice, consistently drawing raves for his work ethic, which is elite, his love of football, which is, I keep using the E word, but I just saw Restrepo, so I saw what elite slot receiver and elite work ethic looks like. Elite work ethic, elite just kind of mental game for the position. True freshman, Malachi Tony. You talk to people around the program. This guy was nicknamed Baby Jesus as a youth player. So that was his local rep. His father, Antonio De La Brown, not Antonio Brown from the Steelers, different Antonio Brown, but a local legend. This guy has been blessed from a young age with the moniker and the expectations. People who've been around him at UM say that his work ethic, his ability to wake up in the morning, go on the jugs machine, run routes, watch film, ask the right questions. They have not been around a guy like this at this age, and they are saying that he has legitimate star potential, not in 4 years, but star potential sooner than later.
So let's talk about another transfer, D, before we get into some of these young guys. Keelin Marion, a lot of questions about him, what his role is going to look like coming over from BYU. Let's remind people this was the number 1 rated receiver in the portal in the spring window here. Had a question earlier if he's going to have three special teams touchdowns this year. I'm not going to go that far. He has 2 in his career, and we haven't been the most prolific return team in a while. But I think 1 or 2 could be realistic.
Yeah, both last year, by the way, the 2 he had. Yeah. So The two he had last year were what got him that All-America ranking, which he's an All-America as a kick returner, preseason All-America. So you see all the preseason All-America lists. You see Keelin Marion from BYU. Obviously, kick returning stands out. What catches my attention with Keelin Marion, he was getting a lot of attention in spring for what he was doing at receiver at BYU. It looked like he was going to be one of their top receivers. They were very upset to lose him, potentially their number one receiver. He reminds me of like an Arian Smith from Georgia, just to having watched a lot of Carson Beck film. Arian Smith was somebody who had a lot of speed, was a strong guy, kind of like he could be a running back / receiver. He had 5 carries last year. Arian Smith, Keelin Marion had a bunch of carries as well. 17 yards a catch, or 20 yards a catch for his whole career at Georgia was Arian Smith. He had a lot of drops. Part of the reason why Georgia led the nation in drops was Arian Smith had some bad drops from Carson Beck, but also made some big plays, 817 yards last year. So I think Keelin Marion's in that bucket where he'll return kicks, you'll hand the ball off to him. He's physically strong to go along with his speed. He's a mature player. I think he's another one of these guys who's like 23, 24 years old, big personality. The question is going to be just running routes, catching the ball consistently. That's what's going to help his NFL stock. But Arian Smith's a guy that got drafted pretty high himself. I think Arian Smith was like a 4th round. Where did Arian Smith get drafted? Yeah, 4th round pick of the Jets, even with all those drops. So there's a place for guys that just have that explosiveness and that can make those big plays. Because maybe you run a tight route or you drop a pass there on in the first quarter. But if you're making a 90 something yard kickoff return, if you're taking an end around for a 20-yard touchdown, you're catching a bomb for 50 yards. That's a game-changing play. I think Keelin Marion is going to give you that dynamic while also being an older, physically strong, reliable player from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, I think the upside is nice with him. And again, it was an interesting one to me, D, because when he committed, some of the fans were, saying, well, this isn't the answer. And I agree. It's not necessarily the end all be all. He's not going to fix all the problems and say, well, there's your number one, future NFL guy right there who can change a game for you. But it was the best guy on the market according to the rankings. And like you just said, I think he can change a game in certain ways that maybe others on this roster can't.
100%. And really just not what I didn't know. Now having seen, it's the size and the personality. He's a big dude. I think 200 pounds probably fair. And he's just got that bubbly kind of energetic person, high energy personality. I would like to see him get handoffs more, like those end arounds and things like that. I don't think that's necessarily Jojo Trader's game. I think with Marion, his strength, kind of like Cordell Patterson style. I compared him to Arian Smith a second ago. Cordell Patterson, maybe not at that sort of physical beast, right? Cordell Patterson was just a complete monster, but that kind of guy that's like in between a running back and a receiver, I could see that with Marion where you're handing the ball a little bit too, and he's got the size to do it. A lot of questions on your backpack, Pete. These guys must be newer to
weighted vest, man. Weighted vest. But it's good to see that we have new viewers every day.
Yes, that's how Pete's getting the physique right, getting ready for the season, man. He's been in that fifth quarter program, working hard, man.
Coach, I was gonna say, Coach Cristobal says, man, the best teams are the best conditioned. So that's what I'm just trying to aspire to.
It's a lifestyle too. It's not just something you turn off and on. So over 1,100 on, man. Like and subscribe to the show. Appreciate everybody joining us here today as we talk receivers. So Pete, as we've gone through the veterans there, I talked a little bit of Malachi Tony. I think we covered him enough. He potential star player. We'll see, but he's going to be one of he was one of the most talked about players in media day. He's one of the most talked players kind of off the record, and he was the best player in the spring game. He was great all practice. He was great as a senior in high school, even though he reclassified. So now the test is getting through camp healthy, continuing his performance, and then obviously Notre Dame is a whole different animal with their secondary. So we'll see how that all goes. But excitement on Malachi Tony. Some other young players. You touched on Ray Joseph. I wanted to get to him because we got a lot of questions about him. People think we ignore him, and I don't mean to. He got a lot of competition at his spot. But I'll say with Ray, great intangibles, number one. The tangibles are very good too. That's why people talk about him. He's a very explosive player. Was incredibly dynamic in high school. You beat out Clemson for him. I think returning wise, maybe it was just the number, the 35. I think it was a little heavy last year. I don't know this for sure, but seeing him in spring, he looked lighter. He looked more.
I said this the other day. So the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he made more plays in spring with the ball in his hand. Just looked quicker, more dynamic. So he'll be competing. Malachi Tony's going to be competing for that punt return spot. Keontae Scott, who was the best punt returner in the SEC in 2023, he'll be in that mix. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle at the punt return position, the kick return position, and then slot. And Ray will be in the mix of all those. But it won't be easy for him. But he's in there. He's here.
Let's talk about Josh Moore, another one that we get a lot of questions about. Was a big win for Miami last year. In recruiting, people kind of forget because of it, when it happened in the cycle that they flipped him from Florida. We saw him on the 7-on-7 circuit, or I think it was the camp circuit, we should say. I know you saw him in 7-on-7 too, but big-bodied receiver, can go up and get the ball. Is not only that he has the size, but knows how to use his body, which you can't always say about some of these big, young, physical type receivers. And he's not slow either. Once he gets going, he's moving. We saw him do a backflip. Was it a backflip or what was he? Jumped over a fence?
Jumped over a fence, yeah.
He jumped over a fence kind of in stride after making a crazy touchdown catch at the camp that we went to. And the word that I keep hearing, and I've said this a few times, that he's a flash guy right now. He makes some plays that make you open your eyes. His role, I think, will grow as the season goes on, but there are certain situations such as red zone that I think he could be a valuable asset.
Yeah, he's our biggest receiver. So just going on the practice field, easy to spot him. He's the biggest guy. And he's also the one, when it comes to just outside the zone type of catches, plays behind them, plays in the air. He has the biggest catch radius on the team. CJ Daniels will probably compete with him in that. I just think from a natural standpoint, Josh Moore just a little naturally bigger and just more freakish in his movements. Moved well too. He got a lot of playing time with the second and first team in spring. CJ Daniels, again, was injured for most of that. So that allowed Josh Moore to get a lot of playing time. Like you said, Pete, flashes more than consistency, but that's normal for a freshman, especially a big guy like him. Let's see how he's progressed over the course of the summer. And I think the real thing I want to see with Josh Moore is how does he connect with Carson Beck? Carson Beck loves back shoulders, throwing a contested receiver, or receivers that are being covered and putting it in a spot where they can make a play. Colby Young, we use that comparison all the time for both CJ Daniels and Josh Moore because Carson Beck really, really loved Colby Young. If Colby Young never got into his suspension, you probably would have seen him be Georgia's top receiver throughout the course of the season. So that's what I want to see. I want to see Josh Moore, both how much has he improved over the summer and how does he connect with Carson Beck, because he has a chance to play right away.
Who are we missing here? I know we're missing a few guys. Chance Robinson, his name comes up.
Very popular.
Yeah, very popular. And I said yesterday, was it yesterday? No, 2 days ago when I was on with 50, because we kind of touched on receiver a little bit because I was playing the CJ Daniels thing. He's kind of in a similar boat as Ray to me, right? Where I think Ray, who has played more to this point, we understand that. But I'm still a believer in them, but it's very tough for me to come on here and bang the table and say, this guy's going to be a great player for us this year until we see it. I'm a huge fan of the talent. From what we've heard, he's gotten himself back healthy, right? But he's just been nicked up time and time again at Miami. That I don't know that I've heard anyone come out and tell me, watch out for Chance Robinson this year, because they're kind of in wait and see mode too. But that's not meaning that they're giving up on him. There's obviously opportunities for people to take reps here now in fall.
Yeah, look, he looks good in his uniform. I mean, that's really all I could say about him based on what I've seen, because he's just been hurt. So he looks good in his uniform. I liked him out of high school. I think with Chance, it's a situation where when he's healthy and he's playing and he has a great practice where he's making contested catches, he's blocking, he's running after the catch, right away he's in the mix.
We'll be the first people trust me, we'll be the first people to hype him up.
Yeah, so I just incomplete, I had not heard anybody say Chance Robinson can't play here. Definitely not that.
No way.
And just seeing him, he brings a different physical presence than others have seen. It's just, he just got to do it. And I promise you, that's what this is. This was fun about this receiving group is there's going to be so much competition. And I think Chance Robinson, I would put his lane in the CJ Daniels, Josh Moore, that mix of guys that he's battling with. So excited to see what he can do. That's one of the we get more questions on Chance Robinson than almost any player on the team. So we were very, and I wish I had a better answer than what I've been giving, which is I don't know. So we'll see, but I'm excited to see what he can do. I remember what stuck out to me when he was in high school was obviously he was a 4-star wide receiver, so he can catch the ball and get open. He was a really nasty blocker, so his mentality he liked contact. And people say, okay, who cares about that? But look at like the Los Angeles Rams, man. Those guys are nasty when it comes to their physicality at receiver. So I don't underestimate that. Obviously, you got to have the talent, which he's a 4-star player. He has that. But I like that he's tough like that. At least he was in high school. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Another guy we had a lot of questions on, Pete. You saw 4 in a row people say the thing.
Nikar.
So Nikar, really, really good his freshman year spring. So that would have been, March, April of 2024. We were out there. That was when we first started the daily podcast talking about him, and every day, hey, Nikar's making plays. Super productive player in Georgia, top 75 player. We flipped from the University of Georgia. Camp, meaning August camp, wasn't as good. I think the veterans just kind of were more consistent than him. And he was a smaller, like a lighter guy, just sort of working his way through injuries and stuff like that. And just, those guys were veterans. They were ready to go. He was number 1 passing officer in the country. He wasn't quite ready for that. This spring, I think what happened was the first few weeks, the 3 freshmen, the Josh Moore, Malachi Tony, and Dalen O'Shea, who we'll get to in a second, they kind of came through and really did their thing, right? They were all making plays. They all looked physically good, strong, but kind of ahead of schedule. So that moved Nikar a little bit more to the back. And then when he finished camp actually strong, like he was stronger as camp went on, finished better than he started. Mm-hmm. And then when he jumped in the portal, I said, look, he kind of plateaued a little bit. The freshman got him, but I think the team that gets him is going to be a very lucky team because there's a lot of talent there. That was what I said on the CanesInSight message boards, 7.5 million posts and counting if you haven't signed up for that. Talking to coaches, they were not happy when he jumped in the portal. They thought he was finishing strong and they could use him, convince him to come back. He brings his fellow Moultrie, Georgia, Colquitt County, I don't know, cousin or friend, Kamar Bonner, the linebacker from NC State, to the team. So now you got 2 of those guys. And big August for him, man. He's one of those guys where I don't say it's do or die for him because he's only a true sophomore, but he's going to need to make some plays because he's got a lot of talent, but he's got a lot of competition as well.
Yeah, I think he gives you a much different dynamic. As Josh Gross says, his speed can be huge for us. A good tunnel screen and he can fly through it. So there's always going to be a place for those guys to touch the ball. But can he emerge in that group is the question.
Yeah.
Yep. Because he's not really is he a slot? Does he play slot here? I don't see him as a slot.
No. I think he's like a flanker, like a Jojo Trader type guy. That would be that he'd battle with him, I think. So, we'll see. Good point from Reek, or good discussion. He says we put too much focus on proven players. I was listening to Ryan Day saying we trust our youth and put them out there. JJ's prime example. Same with Ole Miss. I think it kind of depends, right? If you have
Miami would have trusted Jeremiah Smith as well.
Yeah, if you get in those guys, I think you can. But I'm just pulling up the NFL draft, right? So you got Tetaroa McMillan, who was a high school signee, a 5-star player, then went to Arizona. He was actually committed to Oregon when Mario left to Miami. So Mario actually had him at Oregon. Emeka Buka, another high school signee for Ohio State. They're the best at it because they get the best guys, so they produce those guys. Then you go down the board, Matthew Golden, first rounder to Texas. He's a Houston transfer. So there's a transfer right there that goes first round. Jaden Higgins from Miami, Florida, was Westminster at Iowa State when the Miami really kicking themselves. But that was a transfer. Then you get to Luther Burden, 5-star player that Missouri signed. Trey Harris from Ole Miss. That's a transfer from where's Trey Harris from originally? Google it. Obviously, Ole Miss is big time with their transfers. They rely on transfers heavily.
Well, it was like Louisiana
Tech.
Lafayette or
Louisiana
Tech. Yeah.
Yeah. Then Jack Beck was the next receiver picked from TCU, who was a LSU transfer. Then you go to Kyle Williams. I'm just going through the day one, day two picks. Kyle Williams of Washington State, who was Cam Ward's receiver. People always talk about Cam Ward having better receivers here, but really the highest drafted receiver, high third round was Kyle Williams from Washington State. I think the offensive line and running games where he really was better here. Isaac Tesla from Arkansas, that's a transfer. I forgot where he's from. But anyways, you go down the line, it's kind of a mix of transfers and high school guys and those day one, day two picks. So receivers position, I can see it both ways. I think I'd say either give me a 5-star receiver like the Corian Moore who's going to Oregon. I trust him right away. Obviously, Malachi Tony's not a 5-star receiver, but kind of a local elite receiver who you think can play right away. But I wouldn't sleep on transfers. Look at Auburn with Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. I think that guy's going to be in the first round. He might be a top 10 pick this year. So it depends.
I think that's everyone, right, D?
No, well, that's not everyone. We got to get to Dalen Upshaw.
Oh, Dalen Upshaw. There's a lot of good buzz about him. Yeah.
All three of these freshmen people like, man. Everybody likes our freshman class, a receiver. I talked about them every single time we did one of these recaps. So did UP. You're doing those daily practice recaps. They were explosive. They looked like they belonged. They were physically stronger. So the spring before I mentioned Jojo Trader and Nikar also had good springs as true freshmen, but they weren't as physically strong. And I think they wore down over the course of the year because they just weren't physically ready for what they were doing. Whereas with these guys, Dalen Upshaw, Malachi Tony, Josh Moore, I'm not saying that they're like exactly at their physical peak as true freshmen, but they're just further along. They're sturdier. And with Upshaw, man, you remember we talked about it all the time. He was my favorite guy in that recruiting class as far as like a 3-star that I said, hey, this is the guy we got to be talking about, Dalen Upshaw. I don't understand his ranking. Seeing him for a spring, I still don't. Guy's serious about football. He knows what he's doing. He did everything in Alabama for his high school, Phoenix City, with Pat Nix, former Miami offensive coordinator, his head coach. He was catching screens. He was doing end arounds. He was running all kinds of routes. He's twitchy. He's got core strength. He can take contact. He's a hands catcher. He runs great routes. He's quick in and out of his routes. He's got good size. Has enough speed to get down the field. He reminds me of Allen Hurns. That's a comparison I've used for him. He's just an Allen Hurns to me, solid in every category type of receiver. And I'm a big fan of Upshaw. He could play right away.
I like that. comparison. Similar size, and I think the way they win will be similar as well.